Off the coast of Croatia, archaeologists have recently uncovered something incredible. A perfectly built stone road, still intact, buried under layers and layers of mud. It's almost 7,000 years old. Who built it? Why? And where does it lead? This road might have been lost forever, if not for sheer luck. Back in 2021, archaeologists were looking at satellite images of the island of Korčula, a little Croatian island in the Adriatic Sea. Suddenly, they noticed some strange shapes, odd patterns, half seen beneath the waters. Curious, they dove into the waters to check it out. That's when they uncovered something incredible, a sunken Neolithic settlement, the village of Sunken. But the ancient village was just the beginning. In 2023, while exploring the site further, archaeologists found something even more breathtaking. A perfectly built stone road, still intact, buried under layers of sea mud. It was thousands of years old. The road is only 13 feet wide. It's laid carefully, stone by stone, a ghost of a forgotten world stretching across the seabed. This was no accident of nature. The stones were too precisely shaped, too deliberately placed. And somehow, across 7,000 years of storms and tides, both the village and the road survived. One of the scientists said it's a miracle. The islands around Korčula shielded the coast from massive waves. This spared them both from destruction. They also found something else: ceramic fragments and flint knives, small whispers of the people who lived here in the past. But who were they? The mysterious road goes way back into the Stone Age. An ancient culture called Hvar culture lived on the Hvar island nearby. But they also spread across the eastern Adriatic coast and built the village of Sunken just offshore from the coast of Korčula Island. The road connected the village to the main island. If you set foot on Hvar Island today, you'd see a fascinating island of pine forests, lavender fields, and sunlight that spills across vineyards. But you'd also be stepping into a living mosaic woven from 7,000 years of history. Neolithic people lived there around 4,900 BCE. That was before the rise of cities, before the pyramids of Egypt, before history even had their first kings. These people found shelter in the island's caves. In local places like Grabcheva Cave and Markova Cave, they crafted delicate painted pottery, some of the oldest in Europe. This ancient settlement once bustled with life, perched near beaches where now only waves roll. The people who built it walked barefoot over its stones, carrying baskets of grain, tools, and clay pots filled with water or olive oil. Among those little shards, archaeologists discovered something amazing: the oldest depiction of a boat in all of Europe. Even in 3,500 BCE, the people of Hvar were dreaming of journeys beyond the horizon. And even though the Neolithic farmers of Hvar culture didn't have great technology, they had already learned to tame the earth. They built megalithic stone tombs, raised circles of rock in nearby Gradina Bay, and crafted intricate flint blades and stone axes. Why are Sunken village and the road underwater now? We don't know for sure. Perhaps something happened to them in the past that caused this. In any case, the road and Sunken are all we have remained from those days. Hvar Island was always a fascinating place to live in. The island's history is rough and beautiful, carved by rebellions, pirates, and foreign kings. Around 385 BCE, the Greeks sailed across the sea and found this beautiful island, a high limestone ridge, hidden freshwater springs, and fertile plains kissed by the sea breeze. No wonder they decided to settle here. These Greeks themselves came from Paros, a sunny island in the Aegean Sea. When they got to Hvar Island, they found a town they called Faros. They weren't being super original. Now we know this town as Stari Grad, which means Old Town, and it actually is one of the oldest towns in all of Europe. They brought with themselves deep knowledge of farming, sailing, and city building. This helped them to do something extraordinary. They divided the land into perfect geometric squares, neat fields for vineyards, olives, and grains. This perfect patchwork of farms is now called the Starry Grad Plain, and it's still so pure and unchanged after more than 2,000 years that it became a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Later came the Romans. Their villas and roads now also threaded across the hillsides. Then came the Croats. Their traditions, from religious processions to the haunting ancient songs of Holy Week, have survived the passing of centuries. But it was under the Venetians, which was about the 15th century, that Hvar truly blossomed. When the Venetians came there, they chose Hvar town as a major port. They built fortresses and arsenals, cathedrals, theaters, and squares. It was the golden age of Renaissance, and Hvar brought three genius giants of Croatian culture to the world. The first one was Petar Hektorovic. He captured the life of fishermen and the spirit of the sea in his epic Fishing and Fisherman's Talk. In a local castle, the Tvrdalj Castle, his stone villa still guards its secret fish pond. The second one was Hannibal Lukic, who wrote The Slave Girl, the first secular drama in Croatian culture. And finally, Martin Benetovic, a painter, musician, and playwright who left his mark on the island's soul. In the Franciscan monastery by the sea, there's a beautiful painting stretching across an entire wall, The Last Supper. Not the original by Da Vinci. This one is thought to be created by Matteo Ingoli. Same theme, but a different artist, though this work is considered a Renaissance masterpiece. Back then, Hvar Island became a jewel of the Venetian Empire, a naval stronghold, and later, a stage for Renaissance poets. But this place wasn't always peaceful. In the 16th century, the Ottoman Empire came here. Their corsair raiders swept across the sea and wanted to conquer the island. Hvar's people built fortresses that still cling defiantly to the cliffs, even to this day. Napoleon also came here, but even all this couldn't drown Hvar's spirit. Life always returned to the fields. Lavender bloomed purple over the terraces, rosemary and olive trees tangled the hillsides, and wine flowed from vineyards that the Greeks once planted. And still, the culture lived. In the 17th century, the island founded something unheard of: the first ever public theater in Europe. Before, theaters were meant for kings and nobles alone, but this one was a place where commoners and nobles sat together beneath carved stone arches, watching plays lit by candlelight. The locals also founded the first ever professional European Tourist Association. Tourism began early with the formation of the Hygienic Society of Hvar in the 19th century. Today, Hvar is known as the Island of Lavender and is crowned the Queen of the Dalmatian Islands. In the square of St. Stephen, the Cathedral of St. Stephen rises. Its bell tower, also built back in the Renaissance, once warned of Ottoman raiders. In the Benedictine nunnery, unseen by any but a few, the sisters weave agave lace. The threads are pulled from the agave fibers, knotted into impossibly delicate patterns, each one unique, each one a prayer captured in cloth. High above the town, you can still see the ancient cannons aimed out to sea, and below them, the glittering sweep of the Pakleni Islands, looking like little emeralds. There's more sunlight in a year than almost anywhere else in Europe, and the rich history in every festival, in the beauty of the Holy Week processions, and in the old songs that drift on the sea breeze. It started as a routine cleaning to scoop some mud off the coast of Indonesia, but turned into a discovery of remnants of a lost, submerged, Ice Age landmass. Archaeologists found more than 6,000 fossil fragments, and among them, 140,000-year-old Homo erectus remains. This find made scientists rethink how early humans lived, moved, and interacted in Southeast Asia. For years, they thought that Homo erectus on Java Island lived in isolation, separated from the rest of the world. But these dredged fossils blew that story apart. It turns out Java wasn't an island at all back then, but part of a landmass called Sundaland. So, Southeast Asia stretched out like someone had drained the ocean, connecting Indonesia, Malaysia, Borneo, Thailand, and Vietnam into one gigantic landscape. Today's islands of Java, Sumatra, Borneo, and Bali were connected by river systems that probably looked like the Amazon, by forests where giant animals roamed, and by coastal plains that would later sink beneath the ocean when temperatures went up. And Homo erectus were not stuck. They were thriving in what honestly sounds like prehistoric bliss. Yep, it was nothing like we normally imagine Ice Age, a sort of frozen wasteland. Sea levels dropped more than 400 feet because so much water froze into glaciers. When all that water got locked up in ice, whole sections of the ocean floor popped out of the water like stepping stones. Suddenly, early humans didn't need boats. They could literally walk from what's now mainland Southeast Asia all the way to places that are islands today. They could do it while exploring and chasing herds across open land. It was sort of like a giant prehistoric highway system. That giant highway matters because it completely rewrites how early humans moved around. Instead of being trapped, Homo erectus had a whole continent to roam. They followed rivers, crossed valleys, and adapted to different environments the same way you learn shortcuts to the office or find new routes to your favorite coffee shop. And because everything was connected, animals wandered freely too. Tigers, elephants, supersized cows, and turtles the size of small cars. People followed these big animals. This among the fossils pulled from the Madura Strait, such as cut-marked turtle shells and cracked open bovid bones. When you see precise cut marks on bone, it means someone was deliberately carving meat off the bone with tools they made themselves. And cracked bones mean they were taking out marrow, which was like prehistoric energy gel, rich, fatty, and perfect when you need calories to survive. That's a level of planning and skill scientists didn't expect from Homo erectus. It pushes Homo erectus closer to species like early Homo sapiens and Denisovans when it comes to behavior. It means they weren't just surviving on scraps, they were actively pursuing animals, processing, and maybe even sharing food the same way later humans did. So if you imagine them as slow, hunched cavemen, forget that. These people were sharp. The techniques they used to process food look eerily similar to those used by other hominins. Not just Homo erectus, we're talking Homo floresiensis, Denisovans, and early Homo sapiens. That opens the door to the possibility that these groups didn't just exist side by side. They might have interacted. Maybe they traded ideas and copied techniques. Or maybe they even interbred or shared territories. All this makes Southeast Asia look not like a series of isolated islands, but like a buzzing human ecosystem, a place where different human species crossed paths. And here's the heartbreaking part. Everything we know about this place, everything humans built, lost, and discovered there, is all underwater now. When the Ice Age ended, glaciers melted like forgotten ice cream cones on a hot sidewalk. Sea levels rose. Slowly, then quickly, rivers flooded, coastlines vanished, entire human landscapes disappeared beneath the waves. Sundaland drowned over thousands of years, and the people who lived there either adapted or moved to higher ground. Archaeologists now try to interpret what these people did, how they lived, and how many human species walked that land. Every time they pull together bone or artifact from the seabed, we get one step closer to rewriting everything we thought we knew about early human migration. And the new discovery could mean that Southeast Asia may have been just as important to human evolution as Africa, the Middle East, or Europe. Looks like Sundaland wasn't a side quest, but a real mixing zone, a place where humanity experimented, adapted, learned, and evolved. Unexpected finds like this one in Indonesia keep popping up around the world and surprising scientists. Farmers in China were hoping to scoop up bat droppings for natural fertilizers inside a narrow limestone cave. But instead, they spotted pieces of fossilized bone that looked suspiciously like parts of a human skull. This skull turned out to be ridiculously old, around 300,000 years old. Scientists eventually named the fossil Maba 1. The discovery happened way back in 1958, but ever since then, nobody could agree on which ancient human species this skull belonged to. During the late Middle Pleistocene, the world was basically a crowded highway of different ancient human species wandering around. Or just maybe, Maba 1 came from a species we've never met before. The big issue was that researchers only found part of the skull, no jaw, no other bones. So it was like trying to solve a giant puzzle with half the pieces missing. For ages, scientists guessed it might be Neanderthal. But now they've used micro-CT scanning, which is like an X-ray superpower that lets you peek inside fossils without breaking them. That's when they noticed weird tube-like structures connecting parts of the brain case, something Neanderthals basically never had. The inside shape of the skull looked way more like Homo erectus, a much older human species. But even that wasn't a perfect match. The skull's size and shape were closer to modern humans and Neanderthals, and it showed traits Homo erectus usually didn't have. For example, it had a shorter forehead area and a thickened bregma, the meeting point between two skull bones. Maba 1 also had a strange dent on the forehead, almost like a bruise frozen in time. Whatever caused it, maybe a fall, maybe anemia, it happened while the person was alive. But there was no sign of infection, so that individual probably healed and kept living after whatever hit them. So Maba 1 doesn't match any known species perfectly, but it shares features with several and has a similar mystery fossil vibe as others found across Africa. In 1976, a famous paleontologist and her team found another human-like skull in Tanzania. That skull had features that looked surprisingly similar to Homo sapiens, even though it was unbelievably old. Scientists think it may be one of the earliest examples of our species ever discovered. That means this skull could help solve one of science's biggest questions. When exactly did Homo sapiens first show up? The sediment layer where that skull was found goes all the way back to the Middle Pleistocene. That's way earlier than what old textbooks used to claim about when modern humans appeared. And then there's the skull that turned up in Zambia's Broken Hill ore mine. Miners literally stumbled on it, plus a few other bones, completely by accident. Scientists started calling it Rhodesian Man, and at first, everyone thought it might be the big missing link between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. But with newer research tools and better dating methods, they discovered it's around 299,000 years old and probably belonged to someone from the species Homo heidelbergensis. Every new fossil acts like a missing puzzle piece on the giant chaotic story of human evolution. Each one helps scientists connect species that once seemed unrelated, redraw family trees, and rewrite chapters of our past we didn't even know were wrong.
Once upon a time, there was a lighthouse so tall that you could spot its beam from 30 miles away. A mysterious tower that was the symbol of wealth and engineering genius. Made with stones so giant and heavy that it still makes us gasp. How did they do that? It has survived earthquakes, one after another, until it finally crumbled in the 14th century. Fast forward to today, and archaeologists have just hauled 22 of its colossal blocks off the seafloor. They're putting the tower back together, to be once again admired and explored, but not how you might imagine. The Lighthouse of Alexandria wasn't just a lighthouse, it was the lighthouse of ancient civilizations, one of the longest-standing world wonders. Built around 280 BCE, on a tiny island called Pharos, it reached about 330 feet up in the sky. For comparison, that's taller than the Statue of Liberty or Big Ben. Now, keep in mind that this was before cranes, steel beams, or gym enthusiasts, and it becomes awe-inspiring. For sailors, spotting that gleaming tower was like finally seeing your exit sign after hours of driving on the world's most dangerous highway. The lighthouse was a sight for sore eyes, because legend says the waters around Pharos were tricky, full of hidden reefs that could smash ships to pieces. Old sources claim it took about 12 years to build, with the price tag being around 800 Athenian talents of silver, which is an ancient unit of weight close to 57 pounds. That means someone had to haul chests holding 23 tons of coins, without a forklift, most likely across the sea. Wow! The lighthouse was so impressive that the word Pharos ended up being used for lighthouses in a bunch of different languages. The structure had a cool three-tier design. It was square at the bottom, octagonal in the middle, and cylindrical on top. On its top, it had a statue, most likely of Zeus or Poseidon. The lighthouse's white limestone exterior was polished with a sun-catching plaster, so it gleamed like a beacon even without fire. At night, things were different. Wood was hard to come by in Egypt, so the fire on top may have been fed with bundles of papyrus roots or even naphtha for a brighter flame. Whatever the fuel, its glow was boosted by a massive polished bronze mirror. Now, bronze mirrors were common back then. It wasn't until the Renaissance, way long after the pharaohs had crumbled, that glass-coated mirrors became standard in European lighthouses. During the day, the same mirror could reflect sunlight, and the tower's bright white silhouette, along with the smoke curling up from the fire, would help sailors find their way. Alexandria was one of the biggest ports in the ancient world, filled with merchants, travelers, and messengers, and the lighthouse was its landmark. Now, fun fact, if you're a fan of the Song of Ice and Fire universe, it certainly popped into your mind when reading about the High Tower of Old Town. Some fans speculate that not just the fictional lighthouse, but also the city itself, was directly inspired by Alexandria. And George R.R. Martin's love for ancient wonders doesn't stop there. There's also the Titan of Bravos, and the beloved author confirmed the intentional parallel to the imposing Colossus of Rhodes. For over 1,600 years, the lighthouse stood high against time, storms, wars, and intrigues, just like in the Game of Thrones. But it was finally defeated by nature itself. Sadly, a few major earthquakes during the 14th century brought it down, scattering its massive stones across the seabed. For over 5 centuries, the remains of the lighthouse just sat there under the waves, basically turning into an underwater rock garden. Divers knew about them, but hauling up 60-ton blocks from the sea is a job for a superhero, or a super powerful crane. And, until recently, it was a lot safer to leave them where they were. Alexandria is still, to this day, a busy harbor, and isn't exactly the easiest place for delicate archaeology. In the 1990s, archaeologists started mapping the whole area around Pharos Island. What they found was precision-cut limestone and granite blocks, some still showing carved edges. Over time, more than 100 massive pieces were cataloged, including chunks of columns, statues, and giant building blocks that could only have come from the lighthouse. Finally, in 2025, Egyptian and French teams joined up and brought that super crane along with a team of divers. In a carefully planned operation, they brought up 22 giant slabs from the seabed. There were parts like door lintels, threshold slabs, and a mysterious pylon, speculated to be some kind of monument. Some of those blocks weigh 70 to 80 tons, which is the weight of 20 African elephants. Those giant boulders are on dry land for the first time in over 600 years. But what happens now? Are researchers really about to rebuild the lighthouse like a giant Lego set? Not quite. You can't just stack century-old blocks like that. For starters, no one's 100% sure what the Lighthouse of Alexandria really looked like. Yeah, we've got drawings and clues, most famously, the tiny images stamped into Roman coins from Alexandria. But they're more like an artist's quick sketch, not quite the blueprints for recreating something down to the last detail. And then there's the missing pieces problem. Those recovered stones are just a fraction of the original structure. Over the centuries, much of the lighthouse's material was repurposed. In fact, the spot where the lighthouse used to stand is now home to the Citadel of Qaitbay, a fortress built right on its old foundations. The fort is not just a symbol of the past, but also a tourist attraction and a recognizable Alexandrian landmark. So, no, Alexandria isn't about to get its legendary tower back. At least not in that way. Instead, these newly recovered stoneworks are headed for conservation labs to be studied. Specialists will clean, stabilize, and document every carved groove and chisel mark. Later, they're likely to head to a museum. After all, it's part of the national treasure. However, that's not the end of the story. We still have the technology on our side that promises a fully recreated and explorable lighthouse, just like it was all those centuries ago. The entire endeavor is called the Pharos Project, and its mission is to turn those hauled massive stones, lintels, thresholds, base slabs, and even a mystery pylon into a complete walk-through digital twin of the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Each piece is getting high-resolution 3D scanning, joining more than 100 fragments already recorded underwater. The goal isn't just a research. The Pharos Project aims to bring back the lighthouse's original look and feel and turn it into a museum. 330-foot-tall structures often have a lot of stairs, and virtual reality is going to be far less painful for my old feet. Museum visitors could walk around its base in augmented reality, while researchers could use the model to test new theories about its structure and function. Hopefully, we'll be able to customize our own atmosphere, dim the lights, and examine the walls just like in a video game. Maybe they'll render pigeons and seagulls to make it even more authentic. We still don't have many details, but the entire thing is being recorded and will be made into a documentary. While we don't have booths to time travel, talented designers can bring the past back to the present. They just need the correct concept art. Sure, nowadays you can recreate almost everything in 3D, but the point here is the authenticity, to put it back together exactly how it was. This is what the Project Pharos wants to achieve. Maybe one day, every ancient world wonder will end up being recreated in a similar way. But there's no reason to stop there. Virtual tourism can save time and money, and while nothing can replace the real experience, visiting authentic locations recreated in virtual reality may be the next best option. Locals are already excited. The Citadel of Quake is already drawing people, but now Alexandria is about to get the first digital tourist attraction. Soon, anyone with a VR headset can stand on top of this historic wonder, squint while watching the sunset, and finally answer the burning question: is it possible to get exhausted while climbing virtual stairs? And can I customize the soundtrack? Ooh.
Hold your breath, we're going to the seabed. What do we have here? A lot of fish, octopuses, coral reefs, perfect circles of unknown origin, shrimps, stingrays, sharks. Wait, what? Hold on. What are those perfect circles on the seabed? Wow! Perfectly symmetrical, 67 feet in diameter, with a clear outline. 1, 2, 3, 10, 20. There are so many of them. 1,300 strange rings at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. What are they doing there? How did they appear? Try to guess. Traces of an extraterrestrial civilization? The remains of an ancient city? A new kind of sea creature? There's a 99% chance you won't be able to give the correct answer. But here's a little hint. There's a connection between these circles and the Ice Age. It seems that the mystery has become even more complicated, but let's find the answer together. So it all started in 2011. Marine biologists discovered mysterious circles at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, and the first question that arose was why no one had noticed them before, given the vast territory these circles occupied. The fact is that a big part of the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea is too shallow and close to the shore. And for this reason, no one is engaged in mining there. At the same time, the bottom is too deep for scuba divers. Thus, the circles were in some kind of blind spot. Let's move on. The circles are approximately the same size with a clear outline and perfect symmetry. But the strangest thing is that there's a dark spot in the center of each of them. Visually, it looks like a fried egg with a yolk in the middle. In 2013, biologists discussed the discovery at a scientific conference and made assumptions about the nature of these circles. Perhaps they were connected to underwater volcanoes that left such strange marks after the eruption. Perhaps it was a strange geological formation. But why are they so perfectly round? It doesn't look like they appeared by accident. Okay, let's move on. Is it possible that it's coralline algae growing in weird shapes? You can guess as much as you'd like, but scientists needed to go down to the bottom and study the rings up close. So they did. In the center of the ring was a large protrusion formed by red calcareous algae. This ledge was several feet high and wide, and there were swaying fan-shaped growths at its top. The strange ledge was surrounded by some kind of pale scree that looked like debris. The black ring itself consisted of rhodoliths, accumulations of hard, rocky algae. Scientists realized that those weren't just circles, they seemed to be alive. Okay, more questions appeared. Let's say it's some kind of strange algae, but why form these circles? What made them this way? Scientists took samples of the material from the center of the circles and found out that they were about 21,000 years old. At that time, large-scale events were taking place. They changed the appearance of Earth and the fate of all creatures living on it. 21,000 years ago was the peak of the last ice age. The Mediterranean Sea was much smaller and colder than it is now, and the seabed on which the mysterious rings appeared was closer to the surface. Now it's dark here, but at that time, this place was illuminated by sunlight passing through the water. Scientists also discovered several caves with layers of sedimentary rocks near the circles. In the past, these caves were located above the coastline and were washed by waves, resulting in erosion and the appearance of these empty gaps. Now they're completely underwater. Okay, what does this give us? The cold sea was not too deep during the Ice Age. What's next? Next, the scientists found out the nature of these strange ledges in the middle of the rings. At first glance, they looked very similar to corals, but in fact, they were sediments formed by coralline algae. These photosynthetic organisms created a skeleton of calcium carbonate, and the reason they did it there is that it was a warm place with access to sunlight. In the beginning, these algae were thriving. They expanded outward and formed something similar to domes or large pancakes. Then the Ice Age began to end. The weather became warmer, the water gradually heated up, and giant continental glaciers began to melt. A huge amount of melted ice flowed into the Mediterranean Sea. Its level rose, the bottom became deeper, and there was less and less light. The beautiful algae slowly plunged into darkness. Their domes collapsed and left behind those little ledges in the center and pieces of calcium carbonate scattered around. For thousands of years, there was nothing around those algae remains. But where did the big circles come from? After the melting of glaciers, the Mediterranean sea level stabilized about 8,000 years ago. The algae grew new layers in the form of small ledges, those swaying fan-shaped growths. This organism began to develop the pieces of calcium carbonate, and then small pieces began to roll down the ledges. They rolled in different directions, forming those perfect circles. At the moment, this version is the most realistic. Scientists say they have no direct evidence that the mysterious circles appear this way, but they also have no reason to believe that this version is incorrect. If any of you were hoping that someone or something had deliberately drawn these circles, don't get upset. There are other mysterious circles on the seabed, and this time they were created for an important purpose by one amazing creature. In 1995, divers noticed beautiful circles with a geometric pattern right on the sandy bottom of the shores of Japan. It looked like someone had drawn them on the sand. The circles weren't ancient because otherwise the water would have swept the patterns away. Indeed, soon those drawings were erased, but then new ones appeared. Nobody knew what was going on. Was someone drawing stuff to tease divers? But it turned out to be much cooler. The patterns were supposed to attract females, and this someone who drew them was a small, white-spotted pufferfish. The males of these fish flap their fins on the seabed, swim in different directions, and thus draw amazing patterned circles. They have no art education, and they probably can't think abstractly, but they really want to start a family. These fish are about 5 inches long, but their artworks are about 7 feet in diameter. These little artists try their best, but what happens afterward? The female swims in, looks at the pattern, and gives her score. If she likes the pattern, she's ready to start a family. If she doesn't like the drawing, she dashes away and leaves the poor pufferfish with a broken heart. Nothing much is known about the drawings. Scientists can't get into the fish's brain and find the answers. All we can do is observe. And during long observations, scientists noticed some curious things. Around the center, there are perfectly aligned gaps and patterns. The fish not only draws outlines on the seabed, but also decorates them with fragments of shells. That is, the male tries very hard, like an artist working on their painting. The fish creates this masterpiece within 7 to 9 days. After that, undercurrents wash it away, and the fish has to rebuild it if the female doesn't like this work. But if the female chooses the male, they become a couple. The female lays eggs in the center of these circles. Then she swims away, and the male stays with the eggs for 6 days to protect and care for their offspring. The behavior of these fish is similar to that of bowerbirds, birds that build small huts out of twigs and leave and decorate them with colorful berries and flowers. And all this in order to attract a mate to create offspring. Let's talk about some unusual drawings. You've probably heard about those large geometric patterns on fields made by spacecraft from other galaxies. They're fake. The circles were drawn by people to attract attention. You might also know about cave paintings that our distant ancestors made to express themselves. Awesome! And still, there's nothing unusual about it. But have you ever heard of strange patterns on the seabed? Do you know what's so strange about them and who created them? Scientists know for sure that they weren't drawn by humans. The deeper the water, the less mobile it is. On the surface or in shallow places, constant currents move the water, carrying nutrients and changing the floor's landscape. But at depth, under very high pressure, these currents are slower. If someone paints a picture on the seabed or swims by touching the sand with their body, those footprints will probably remain there for a long time. It's such patterns that help scientists understand how different marine life moves, how it feeds, how it reproduces. In a word, how they live. These patterns may look like winding paths, circles, or small pits for storing food. Marine researchers mostly know the cause of these footprints, but what they found at the bottom of the Fram Strait between Greenland and Svalbard stunned them. They conducted deep-sea surveys of this region. Scientists sent remotely operated vessels into the depths. Using those machines, they took pictures of the seabed and noticed 106 strange octagonal structures. They were quite strange and kinda beautiful. But what animal could leave this pattern? And most importantly, for what purpose? Scientists suggested that those octagonal footprints might show prey handling. That is, some creature did something with its prey and left such patterns. Was it stalking? Or did some animal grab its prey tightly and drag it along the seabed? The scientists wanted to know for sure. Some of the octagons were grouped, others were separated. After analyzing the images, the researchers came to the conclusion that those patterns were left by Dumbo octopuses. These amazing creatures with jelly-like bodies are inkless and have a pair of large lop-eared fins on their heads. Pretty cute creatures. After the scientists found out the nature of the drawings, they began to study the cause. Why did Dumbo octopuses leave these patterns? The researchers observed them and discovered a strange feeding sequence that was repeated in a circle to catch prey. This sequence included spreading, enveloping, retreating, and flapping fins frequently. Look carefully. First, the octopus slowly floats over the seabed. They're extending the tentacles parallel to the ground. Then they spread their webbed tentacles and grasp the ground beneath them to reach the food. They also flap their fins to catch food that might end up between them and the seabed. After that, they swim off into open water. Their way of extracting food has a scientific name: pelagic benthic feeding. It means they're swimming in the open water and feeding on the bottom. Scientists probably enjoyed watching octopuses because these creatures weren't afraid of the vessels that recorded their hunting process. Moreover, the animals showed curiosity and even swam closer to the camera. And then they sailed away in an umbrella pose. Okay, we've seen patterns that appear because of an unusual way of getting food. Let's now move over to the Japanese coast. Here, on the seabed, you can see amazing geometric designs made for a purpose: to find love. Meet this handsome guy called the pufferfish, also known as fugu. You've probably heard that this fish is poisonous and it's very dangerous to eat it, but you probably didn't know that it painted pictures on the seabed to attract females. A pufferfish male swims above the bottom, flapping its fins on the surface and thus drawing a really beautiful pattern. Then it finds pieces of shells or some kind of trash and decorates the created maze with this stuff. Such a tiny fish the size of a human palm is painting a masterpiece bigger than a round double bed. It works hard to perfect every line, and it's been at it for over a week. But why? To impress the love of its life. If a female pufferfish likes the pattern, then they create a family together. In the middle of this circle, the female lays eggs and then swims away. The male takes care of the eggs until they hatch, but this is an open area. How can a small pufferfish protect its offspring from predators? Well, not only people know about its poisonous properties. The toxin in this fish keeps big predators away, so no one dares to touch it. If the female doesn't like the drawing, it swims away and the poor male is left with a broken heart. The sea current soon washes away the drawing. The fish, after a while, draws a new one and tries to make a family again. But why is it only this fish that draws these patterns? How does its brain work while making this maze? Does it feel aesthetic pleasure creating it? Scientists don't know. The behavior of these fish is very similar to that of bowerbirds. These animals also love creativity. They build beautiful huts from branches and leaves. Then they decorate them with flowers, berries, and basically anything beautiful they find. And they do this to attract females. Fish create beautiful nests on the seabed, birds create beautiful huts for the same purpose. It's fascinating that these creatures are not so different from humans. So, let's move on to our next drawing. This time, you're unlikely to guess who made it. So, in 2013, a photographer used a drone near the town of Nelson in British Columbia to take pictures. He got beautiful shots of forests, lakes, landscapes, and something strange. The drone caught a maze of unknown origin that was located under the surface of Kootenay Lake. The maze was made from stones on the lake bed near the shore, and it was big enough, but it's unlikely that any marine life would be able to collect all those stones in one place. Then, what is it? The guy who found the maze posted it online. Users immediately assumed that it was a petroglyph, an image carved by ancient people into stone. Petroglyphs can be found all over the world, but this Kootenay Lake maze was clearly not set in stone. Theories began to appear on the internet. For example, that the maze was made by indigenous peoples or visitors from other planets. And there was also a version that it was created by a Bigfoot. The truth wasn't that exciting. Professors from the Department of Anthropology at the University of British Columbia joined the conversation. The first thing they did was reject the petroglyph theory. Petroglyphs, they said, were images etched or carved into the surface of rocks, and that maze is just stones lying close to each other. Professors suggested the maze was created during low tide, which had occurred recently. Later, another photo appeared with a similar maze, but without water. Obviously, it was done by people who were just bored. Nothing ancient, nothing extraordinary. Here's another example. In the North Caucasus city of Kislovodsk, strange stone towers stand on the shore of a local river. Stones of different sizes and shapes lie on top of each other, forming low towers. They look unnatural. It seems that they're about to fall, but they've been standing there for weeks and even months. Perhaps they're glued to each other, or an iron rod passes through them. In fact, they really stand on top of each other and anyone can easily break the towers. But how is this possible? A local artist with an amazing sense of balance carefully builds these stone sculptures. Slowly and patiently, he finds the perfect angle and position for each stone before stacking it on top of the others.
So, a mysterious discovery was made deep in the Red Sea, the so-called death pools. Woo, that's scary. In 2020, researchers embarked on a dive into the Red Sea. The mission spot was in the Gulf of Aqaba, between Saudi Arabia and Egypt. Near the end of their expedition, as they ventured deeper into the darkening waters, they noticed some strange seaweed floating above the seafloor. They decided to use a remotely operated vehicle and investigate it. Suddenly, they discovered these strange, motionless lakes of water within the sea. These are called brine pools. They're basically pockets of salty water deep on the ocean floor. And when I say salty, I mean it. Sometimes they're up to 8 times saltier than the ocean water itself. Mysteriously, they don't mix well with the surroundings. They formed millions of years ago, sometime during the Miocene epoch, back when weird creatures roamed the earth, like me, and deeply buried mineral deposits dissolved into the water. The largest pool spans about 170,000 square feet. Meanwhile, 3 smaller ones are under 107 square feet each. At first, this discovery didn't seem that scary. But here's why they're so horrifying. Not only are they disgustingly salty, they also lack oxygen. Now hold on a sec, isn't that normal for something that's underwater? Well, it turns out the Earth's waters are full of oxygen, and at least half of this element on our planet comes from the oceans. Just like plants on land, marine plants such as phytoplankton, seaweed, and algae munch on sunlight and produce oxygen through photosynthesis. They release lots of it into the surroundings. Marine life then eats half of it, so only about a quarter of the oxygen that we breathe actually comes from the oceans. Just like us, sea creatures need this element to survive. Without it, they can't breathe and support their metabolism to live. That's why these pools are super dangerous for most of them. It's like a puddle of thick syrup for bugs. When they get in, the poor things immediately suffocate and pass away. Which is why the pools are surrounded by a graveyard of marine animals. But let's see how these things can exist in the first place. Have you ever tried making ice cubes from salty water? Spoiler, it's pretty hard. When you add salt, the water gets harder than usual to freeze, a phenomenon that has a funny name, freezing point depression. Oh, that's because salt interferes with the hydrogen bonds between water molecules. As it finally freezes, stuff like particles, dirt, or dissolved salts get pushed out to the sides. As a result, the salt's kind of squeezed out of the ice crystals and gets trapped near the edges in small bubbles or pockets. Something similar happens in the ocean when seawater starts freezing under super cold polar caps. The salt doesn't freeze with the water. Instead, it gets pushed out, forming a super salty cold liquid, the brine. And then it sinks down to the ocean floor. On a large scale, all this process also helps currents to form. Despite being so dangerous, the pools are still full of microbial life, because microbes couldn't care less, they'll survive anywhere. There are literally thick mats of them in the brines. There are also some salt-loving creatures, like shrimps and eels, hovering around the pool's edges. They're being super creepy, waiting to catch unsuspecting prey that ventures too close to the toxic death pool. Ew. Well, it sounds icky, I know. But this discovery gives us some fascinating insights into how life might have originated on Earth. We already know from the evolution theory that we came from the ocean, but now scientists think that life might have begun in the deep sea in some super dark, oxygen-free places. These brine pools are like time capsules. They're one of the closest things we've found to the early Earth. They can tell us the planet's history of earthquakes, floods, tsunamis, and more. For example, they have some traces of rainfall that happened over 1,000 years ago. And they can also help us search for life on other water-rich planets. For example, Mars most likely used to have huge oceans on it. Now, NASA scientists want to send a special instrument called HABIT for a special red planet mission to study things similar to our brine pools. This will tell us more about how life appears and survives in the universe. There is lots of unexplored fascinating stuff like this in the Red Sea. That's why scientists conducted the so-called Decade Expedition and spent around 5 months exploring the place. This expedition was launched by the National Center for Wildlife. They made so many remarkable discoveries that now we've got 77 new research papers. For example, they found over 10 blue holes, incredible underwater sinkholes that host unique ecosystems. They also learned that dolphins can use those blue holes to protect their young from predators. Scientists also found traces of great white sharks, a creepy community of deep-sea lanternfish living in low oxygen conditions, and even a new coral species. It's the most resilient deep-sea corals that also vibe just fine without oxygen, like microbes we mentioned. Speaking of which, research also showed us some new ancient thermal vents and large blobs of microbial formations near Farasand Island. Now, can you believe that with all that, we only explored 5% of the ocean? It's divided into several layers based on depth. Each layer becomes darker and more isolated from sunlight as we go deeper. The places that no sunlight can reach are terrifying. Now, the fun, cute layer with dolphins and turtles is called the epipelagic or sunlight zone. It's so tiny, but even this layer is about 650 feet deep. Then we have the mesopelagic or twilight zone. It's the layer of mysterious octopus, shark, and other loners, which extend to about 3,000 feet down. And then the horrors begin after this one. We encounter the bathypelagic or midnight zone. It extends to 13,000 feet below the surface, about a half of Everest above you. Here we have the famous poor blobfish, squids, and anglerfish. Below it is the abyssal zone. It extends to about 20,000 feet deep. Since there's not much sunlight or oxygen, as we mentioned, most creatures here are quite small, like tube worms and shrimp. The darkness continues until we arrive at the scariest place of the planet, the place full of trenches formed by tectonic plate movements, the Hadal Zone. It's named after Hades, the deity of the underworld in Greek mythology. Just like Hades' realm is dark, remote, and guarded, the Hadal Zone is the deepest and most depressing part of the ocean. It starts at depths of around 20,000 feet and can go down to 36,000 feet and more. The famous Mariana Trench also belongs to this zone. Only 3 people in history have ever explored these depths in person, making it one of the least explored and most mysterious places on our planet. However, despite crazy high pressure, near freezing temperatures, and complete darkness, there are still things who manage to survive here. Guys like amphipods, which are critters who feed on dead material sinking from above, and the Hadal snailfish, which lives as deep as 27,000 feet. So scientists used to assume that if there's no sunlight, there wouldn't be that much oxygen around. But one day, a research team decided to measure the levels of oxygen in one of those deep zones. Surprisingly, the levels were super high. They checked the equipment thinking that it was malfunctioning, but nope, all the sensors showed the same thing. Turns out the oxygen was somehow generated by rocks. These small potato-sized rocks on the seafloor are called polymetallic nodules. They're rich in metals like copper, nickel, and cobalt, and they're basically like small batteries. When you put a battery in salt water, it can produce bubbles of gas, a process called electrolysis. In the same way, these rocks create tiny electric currents, which are powerful enough to produce the same gases, splitting water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. It's the first time we saw oxygen being produced by some non-living minerals. This is what scientists now call dark oxygen. It turned out that about half of large marine species, or megafauna, were living just on dark oxygen alone. All these discoveries are reshaping our understanding of where and how life could evolve. It means that we might be able to find life on other planets or satellites with low oxygen conditions, like Enceladus and Europa, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, and they have large bodies of frozen water on them. Wow! From thousands of dollars worth of treasure to brand new phones and ancient cities, let's dive into the water and see what we can find. Imagine going to the river to enjoy a boat ride. Who wouldn't want to take a couple of pics to make the memories of this trip last forever? Oops, the water split. Luckily, you've taken precautions and put your gadget in a waterproof bag. But what if you drop your phone to the bottom of the lake along with this case? This is what happened to some people. A scuba diver and a YouTuber dived into a river popular with tourists and lost some of their gear worth $20,000, including new iPhones and some jewelry. Oops. You might be familiar with the image of a car getting pulled out of the water, either from the movies or TV news. Large cargo vessels sometimes sink, and trucks inside them go along. That's what happened with the Thistlegorm wreck. It sunk in 1941 in the Red Sea, and these Bedford trucks were inside. Want to see something more valuable, like treasure? A British cargo ship was carrying a heavy load of silver ingots, but the vessel sank. Treasure seekers knew there was silver on the ship. Since the 1940s, they've been looking for it. The Odyssey Marine team got lucky. They made the discovery in 2011. The treasure was more than 14,000 feet below the surface. The ship had carried more than 110 tons of silver ingots. Finders keepers! The Odyssey team kept 80% of the treasure and gave 20% to Her Majesty's Treasury. Of course, there were more items on the ship, like letters, teapots, and silk sheets. You can see them in the exhibition called Voices from the Deep at London's Postal Museum. Now how about some underwater art? Sure, here you go, Polynesian moai statues. These statues have been discovered in several areas across the world. For instance, Easter Island is full of different size statues, but many of them can also be found in Cancun, Isla Mujeres, and Punta Nizu, Mexico. Seeing full-body statues from thousands of years ago under the water would probably be a lifetime experience. Gold coins are also popular items found in shipwrecks. Many divers come across coins worth a lot of money. But there's one diver in Florida who truly hit the jackpot. In 2015, they stumbled upon nearly $1 million worth of treasure. The discovery was 51 gold coins, 40 feet of ornate gold chains, and a rare coin that was made for Philip V, the King of Spain. They were once frightening and dangerous, and they still look spooky. Yo-ho! I'm talking about pirate ships. One pirate shipwreck from the 18th century was excavated off the coast of Colombia in 2015. The treasure found there was worth between $4 and $17 billion. It contained precious stones, gold, and many other items. The next one is an underwater city. Neapolis is a city washed away by a tsunami. It was built on the coast of North Africa nearly 1,700 years ago. Divers uncovered the city's remains in 2017. Researchers have also discovered Roman columns, as well as household goods and tools. Now, let's go all the way back to 1503. Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama was fighting a storm when he lost his ship Esmeralda. The ship was discovered in 1998, but it had to wait for more than a decade to be excavated. Researchers found navigational tools there. They didn't have as much value as Spanish gold, but they were historical treasures. Now, in Amsterdam, they fish for bikes in canals. 1/3 of working Amsterdammers cycle to work. Others use their bikes for different purposes, like exercising, going shopping, and so on. There are more bikes in Amsterdam than permanent residents. Unfortunately, many bicycles and even some cars end up in Amsterdam's canals. The fact that Amsterdam has 165 canals with a combined length of 60 miles doesn't make the authorities' job easier. Obviously, the owners don't throw their bikes into the water. Bikes can end up in the canals because of strong winds, vandalism, theft, or by accident. Every year, authorities fish up between 12,000 and 15,000 bikes. Our next one is a lost city. Heraklion was ancient Egypt's gateway to the Mediterranean. It became submerged and hidden under the sand. This city was famous. Maybe you've even heard about it. It was mentioned in the legend about Helen from Sparta and Paris from Troy. So, how was this ancient city discovered? In the early 2000s, a team of divers found a huge fragment of rock on the seabed and took it up to dry land. It turned out that it was a piece of the statue of Hapi, who was the lord of the river of ancient Egyptians. The team continued searching and found 6 other pieces. Around them, they saw temple ruins, pieces of pottery, jewelry, coins, oil lamps, and so on. Even an old copy of the New York Times. Nah, not really. Granada Underwater Sculpture Park is the world's first, what else, underwater sculpture park. Why is this park so special, besides being located in the beautiful waters of the Caribbean? You can see the park on a snorkeling or scuba diving trip. The sculptures are about 9 to 16 feet underwater. The atmosphere and the experience itself make it special. The sculptures are made from concrete and steel. Some of them weigh as much as 15 tons. They're covered with underwater creatures. The statues were put there to help protect reefs, maintain the health of the ecosystem, and restore underwater life in that area. Now, submarines are designed to go underwater, so maybe you wouldn't expect to see them on this list. But submarines do, in fact, sink. Divers have discovered many submarines. For instance, an Australian submarine was found off the coast of Papua New Guinea more than a century after it had sunk. Now here's another submerged city, but this one was left underwater on purpose. You can see the ancient ruins of Lion City in a lake in China. This lake was created in 1959 when the valley, at the base of Five Lions Mountain, was flooded to create a hydroelectric power station. The 1,400-year-old city, now ruins, got submerged by this flow and stayed this way for over 50 years. It lay untouched at the bottom of the lake until its exploration started in 2001. Divers found out that many structures, carvings, guardian lions, and arches were still preserved. Researchers mapped and documented Lion City. They also looked for a way to protect these structures from further damage. In 2011, the city was announced to be an historic relic under protection. When you see the ruins of Lion City for the first time, the view will take your breath away. So don't forget to hold your breath. Imagine swimming in the dark waters. As you're approaching the city, you see its huge walls and extensive carvings. Marvelous, isn't it? The Cancun Underwater Museum is probably the largest museum of its kind in the whole world. It wasn't lost, per se, but now it's home to an aquatic ecosystem. Who wouldn't want to combine scuba diving and snorkeling with a visit to a world-class garden with 500 sculptures? Placed 30 feet under the surface, these sculptures are made from pH-neutral marine concrete so that they can stay on the ocean floor. Plus, here, the sculptures change over time, unlike in a traditional museum. That's because they become part of the underwater environment and a home to various plant and animal species. In one installation, nearly 450 life-size figurines are grouped together to hint at the harmonious coexistence of humanity. There is also the Anthropocene, which is an actual submerged Volkswagen Beetle placed by the Manchonis Reef. Okay, this is not a lost and found item, but this is just, hey, it's a giant jellyfish and I wanted you to see it. This creature is known as the lion's mane jellyfish, and it's the largest known species of jellyfish. So, I'm happy now. And have you ever discovered anything underwater?